All right, hello class. It's Feb 27th. As you can see here on Moodle, we have the live lecture up. We have the two online lectures. Each of them are about 30 minutes. One is kind of going back into the diagramming tool because it's been a few weeks, so just to remember how to start using the tool. And the other one, I actually make the user flows for Sprint 2, and I kind of walk through my thought process. I did it in the class too, but I spend a little bit more time here talking about how I developed the user flows for Sprint 2. Also notice here I posted up the Sprint 2 deliverables so that it's what exactly I talked about in class. So if I click on it, basically you're going to create another prototype application, has 5 main features. You can start just adding to the existing features from Sprint 1 as I'm doing, or you can choose to do something else. All I really care about is that you have a project description and you've described these 5 main features in the product description, and then you went deeper in the user flows. You actually went through and showed your ideas. I'm just going to move this onto the screen real quick, that you've developed your user flows, that they're all modular with the processing, the input, the prompts, the queues, the decision trees, and what have you. And once you do that, you go forward and code and build this actual prototype, this demo that again is due down here at the end of spring break. And and this week, basically we're the second week in. We have, if you include this week, 3 main weeks of work left and then a spring break. So this is going to be the third online lecture. It's going to be working in Unity some. So I'm going to open that up. If I click play, I'll show you some of the tweaks, modifications. I didn't do any major feature updates. Right now it's 8:44 p.m., which is why when I click play, I'm in complete nighttime. But if that is distracting you, I'll just turn off real time on the clock and just put some arbitrary time there. So some things to note is actually as I move the sun around, notice how the clock doesn't change. It doesn't get shadows on it. It's not being affected by the light. So that's one thing I did. Somebody in class noted it, made a comment that it kind of separates itself from the user interface and that it's a real 3D object and it's interacted with the environment changes, the lighting changes. So yes, if I move around in my scene view here, you can see that the clock is indeed a 3D object. My user interface is way over here. It's just being cast to the screen. It's not in the world. It doesn't position itself in the world. It doesn't get hit by lighting, anything. But when they all get rendered to the screen, they all get kind of rendered off to the side, like they're all part of the same user interface. So one thing I did is I changed the materials on the clock so that no matter what the day and time is, yes, everything in the environment gets impacted, like the strokes, if you notice, as the light changes, and I'll increase the time, and you'll notice that now we have a stroke time feature. But if you notice the time changing, that all the strokes are impacted by the change in the lighting, but the clock is not. So I'll go over that. And now that I changed the timer here, you'll notice that this has been updated a little bit. Let me clear all. It's that this toggle, whether stuff gets destroyed or not based on a timer, is still from last session, last sprint. But now we see that we can actually change the length of a time. So here I'll draw something that lasts for 5 seconds, and I'll draw something that lasts for 1 second. You see the 1 second stroke got destroyed before the 5 second one, even though it was created later. So this works. And as I update it, notice that the little text, the passive information next to it gets updated as well. So I'll go over this slider. I'll go over this updating this information. This is new. This is old. The size stays the same. Nothing was changed there. The color here is different. Like this used to say red, green, blue, and instead now that the button is that color to indicate that's the color that we're changing. And since I was able to change the color of the button, I could get rid of the text saying the color. And that freed up room for me to actually put a number in here. So if you notice, we go from 0 to 100. So I could have done 0 to 1 and give decimals, or I